with us and share your story.
Yeah, you are remarkable and a visionary, and I feel like flowers need to be strewn about. So I do want people to hear your story because it's just absolutely amazing. First question we always start with is getting in our time machine and going back to high school and graduation and looking at the world from that perspective. Tell us about what you saw, what you expected, what you were anticipating in life at that age.
Man, that's a really loaded question. There was a lot of fear, I think. There was a lot of relief as well because I had a pretty rough patch in high school.
Mm.
I wasn't certain if I was going to graduate, and so the fear part was how many people would show up and support the fact that I was, going to cross the line. But then the relief part was that, I had done it, in spite of all the odds that were placed in front of me. And so, looking back, gosh, I don't think I've looked at the world through my 5-year-old self. I have not looked through the world as my graduating high school self. And I guarantee uh, if to really sit in that off camera, there's going to be a lot of emotion there because that poor baby girl was fragile. She was lost. Didn't really know who she was.
Oh, it's hard to imagine
Yeah.
how far you've come.
Yeah,
But I love your
absolutely.
authenticity and honesty in that answer, right?
Mhm.
Like, it's good for people to hear because I feel like there's moments throughout even adulthood that we experience those things. And to hear from someone who's done as much as you have
Mhm.
and to say, I didn't know. I didn't know.
Well, I think sometimes when you are gifted and your gifts are not yet manifesting, but you know they're there, you feel that they're there, and you see so many other people thriving, you begin to really question your gifts. You
Mm.
really begin to question whether or not you're full of yourself.
What gifts did you suspect were hidden in there somewhere at that age?
I don't know that I knew what they were, right? Because I think if I fully understood what they were, I would have been a lot more confident in self. But I had a uncanny ability to diffuse situations with people from all backgrounds of life. I had the ability to solve complex problems. Although my life was a train wreck, I was not applying it to myself, but I had the ability to listen to other people's problems and help provide real solutions. But again, when you're looking in the mirror and you're staring back at someone who was a hot mess, can those really be my gifts?
Mm.
Mm.
You
Am I
know?
lying to myself?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you've made it. You're feeling the sense of relief that you've graduated. Was college right away? You made
School.
it through high
Okay.
school. You're feeling that
Check
sense of
box.
relief. You're saying your life was a hot mess. What happened right after high school for you?
At first, nothing. I had no intention on doing anything, right? I just accomplished something. What do you mean, set a new goal? Like, I just got through something that I thought was going to be absolutely impossible. And the irony is not lost on me because my life really still operates very much this way today, is I woke up one day, sick and tired of yesterday, and decided I was going to do something about my tomorrow. And it was really that simple. There wasn't some, you know, retreat,
Mhm.
this life-changing retreat or this aha
Mhm.
moment. There wasn't a
Some
church
great mentor
sermon.
who
Yeah.
shook you and
There
woke you
was
up.
at the
None of
time,
that.
that just wasn't it. There was just I woke up tired of my yesterday and wanting
Mhm.
a better tomorrow. And I had no idea what college I was going to go to. So I said, you know what? Rather than making this really complicated, I'm going to go to the college in the hometown that I grew up in, and that was Brockport. And again, I didn't put a lot of thought into it. I'm just like, I'm tired. I want something better. So I'm going to give this a try.
You took one step in a different direction.
One step in a different direction.
And where were you living at this time?
I was living with friends in the inner city in Rochester, New York. Maybe inner city might be, it was probably the hood. I was probably living in the hood. Um, and I just remember saying, yeah, no, this isn't what I want.
So, if you're in a place right now where you were, living with friends and in the inner city and realizing that you wanted to go to school and the next step was the one in your community, what helped you get there? You said you just barely graduated high school.
hmm
Tell us about getting into college, choosing your program, and did that look like?
I applied and was accepted and uh, didn't fully know what I wanted to learn. And so I asked, what would I enjoy? I'm like, I'd really enjoy to learn French. I've really, for a long time, had a lot of my decisions was just following my heart. Like, what would I really enjoy? And so I studied French and I also studied computer science. I will say I majored in computer science and I minored in French. And then I switched because I'm like, this isn't coming naturally to me. And I am struggling to keep up. I don't love it as much. And so I'm going to do the one that I really, really love. And so I swapped.
What made a girl at that time choose computer science? I think that is going against the grain.
I think a lot of it had to do with there were these gifts inside, right? Now I fully understand what they are. I'm very aware that I am both a left and right brain person. I am a creative, but I'm also a very methodical, process oriented individual. I was drawn to computer science because of the processes, the technology,
Mm.
you get to break things and, build things. But I was also drawn to the arts, where you can express yourself and you could be creative. And so I by one of the things that I will say is by not restricting myself and by not overthinking it and just kind of following who I naturally was attracted to things that really fit who I was as a person. What I will say is when I swapped computer science as my minor and French as my major, I did extremely well because that's pretty much who I am. I'm probably about 60% creative and about 40% process and logistics, I should
Hmm.
say. And it fit very, very well after I made the change.
So it's interesting how you sort of very self-directed at that age to be that I haven't heard in any of your story like this person pointed at this or I asked this
Mm.
person. Reminds me of my husband.
Mm.
He's very like, I have a thought, I'm going to follow it.
hmm
Is that something still very much a part of who you are?
Very much so. Very much so. It is it's a blessing and a curse.
I believe it.
Because when you're given the gift to solve problems through listening, it's very difficult to find others with that gift. And so, who do you trust to help you work through yours? Because that's my gift,
Mm.
right? It's kind of like if you are a gifted, heart surgeon, like it's if you ever had a heart problem, finding somebody that you would trust to operate on your heart would not be the easiest thing, especially if you are world renowned.
If you're
Yes.
considered the best,
You're
and now you have,
considered the best.
Yes.
What I didn't understand in high school was I was one of the best problem solvers and critical thinkers that there was. I did not understand that. My mother did not understand that. My family did not understand that. And what my family understood was entertainment. They understood being able to see it, hear it. My sisters were amazing vocalists. I mean, they would just bring you to tears with their voices. Unfortunately, I lost one to COVID
Mm.
2019. And so, how can you mold something that you can't really see? And I was too young to understand the ability to multitask and what a talent that was. I was reading one day and I literally jumped out of my chair. When I read that, only 2% of the people in the nation can multitask. The nation. So then there's this light bulb that goes off that makes me understand why I am a bit of a unicorn to people or an oddity. Like, how can you do those many things?
Yeah.
Well, to
Diverse
me,
things, all these
yeah,
wildly different
to
things.
me, I'm not doing that much, and it doesn't really seem that difficult. But again, that's a gift, right? And so it's a blessing and a curse. I am still very much that way, and I do look for finding people that have that gift because I hunger for that sometimes. I really hunger for someone that is just as gifted in that realm to sit down and look at things and give me genuine, authentic, non-judgmental, without motivation in some, particular area,
Agenda, no
yeah, or
agenda.
an agenda to give me their thoughts or their solutions.
All right, I
Mm-hmm.
have one more question going back in time again. So raising my kids, one of my kids is very self-directed. He had all his own ideas. It was a difficult kid to parent because I couldn't see all the decision making. I couldn't understand what was going on. It was just coming out his mouth, and I was like, "What are you like?" Was that hard for your mom to like you were
I
your
said I was a train
brain
wreck.
like smoking coming out of you're thinking about things, you have your own ideas. I mean, was your mom like, "What?"
Yeah, my mom pretty much dropped me off at 14 and was like, I can't do this because she didn't understand my gift and neither did I. And so it's very easy when you have a child that is gifted that way to feel as though they are being rebellious or disrespectful
Exactly.
or they don't get it.
Really, it's just curiosity or like
Good thinking.
this.
It's good
Yeah,
decision making.
you're trying to place the blocks in your own brain and you might be processing beyond or in just a different way than feels natural to them.
How do you look at a child that you birthed and you bathed and you change diapers and you provide for, and they are telling you that they have better ideas and how to get things done than you?
Yeah, it's humbling. I can tell you exactly how it feels.
And for you, Maggie, humbling is a very, very interesting word because for some parents, it's disrespectful. How dare you, right? And this is not a slight to my mom. My mom is a wonderful human being.
Oh, I definitely had my how dare you moments.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right? But she was not equipped to deal with my gifts. But when there were gifts that she could understand, I had the gift of poetry, that made sense to her, right? And so today, very recently, I've taken over custody of both two of my grandchildren, a 3 and a 2-year-old. And my 3-year-old granddaughter, I feel like is a replica of me. And I have heard people say, comment about her personality, and I am tickled because I'm like, I understand now. I understand what my mom was up against. And now here I am staring myself in the face. And now I have to figure out the very things that I wish my mother would have done differently. Can I?
Can you not say
Can
how dare
I?
you?
Can I not say how dare you? Can I not feel disrespected? Can I help blossom her gift? But I can only recognize it now because I held
That's
it.
awesome.
Yeah.
I know we want to talk business. I'm sorry. I have to.
No, you're okay. I think that
Just-
there's a point that I think is that I want to say is you said something about you were an oddity, and I felt that in my bones because I remember thinking to my younger self, my high school self, why am I weird? Does that like I wasn't necessarily weird, but I wasn't necessarily the same. Does that and I couldn't figure that
Mhm.
out. And I think I had a lot of struggle with my own parents and my own dad, especially in late high school, and wanting to forge my own path and being an independent thinker and pushing back against boundaries and it being seen as disrespectful. And for me, not necessarily feeling like I was intending to be disrespectful. And so I felt that. And I think there's probably many people who end up being entrepreneurs, who end up having gifts. I love that you held that as a gift because I don't know that I viewed it that way. I viewed it as, why am I odd?
Mm.
Why,
Mhm.
that in itself is a process that takes a lot of self-reflection, right?
It does.
So now fast forward us. So you go to school, you graduate, you're now in the work environment. Give us a summary of early career that set you on the path to all of these interesting experiences that you've had.
hmm So right before graduating, I spent about a year in France, and that really helped me hone my skills, and that's really where I got good at it. Right, I'm nowhere near as great today as I was then. The practice isn't there. However, I have my computer science degree, and I am fluent in French right now. So I'm gonna go get a job in a call center that had a program that required you to sell into Quebec, Canada. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm on my way, right? I'm in the tech space, so there's my computer science, and now I am providing support. Actually, it wasn't really science; it was more sales support in to Canada, which you've got French speaking there, and eventually I'm going to become a CIO, and I'm going to speak French, and I'm going to pull together these two worlds, and my education was not wasted. I just remember happily marching myself over after the light bulb went off, like, that makes perfect sense, and now how do I career path there? And knocking on my boss's door, who doesn't turn around, but for a moment to say, "Hey," and I explained to him, "I would really like to discuss my career and my career pathing, and, I have this degree in computer science and also French, and I'm really enjoying." I think the telecom company at the time was Avaya. I don't even know if they're still around. But I'd really like to advance either in this company, which was they provided the back business process outsourcing, or Avaya directly. And the man just like turns back and he's typing on his computer. He's like, "Oh my God, that will take you like 10 years." And that was it. I mean, he didn't even say, "But thank you for stopping by." It was like, that was it. And I was so upset because my colleague, who started at the same exact time with me, I later found out had made it to the executive offices. And so I said, "You know what? I'm going to leave." And I took a chance on a small design firm. So here's where my creative came out. So I abandoned French, I abandoned computer science altogether, and I decided that I want to sell for this small design firm in upstate New York, who was pretty much doing a lot of like mechanical packaging for Kodak and Bosch and Lomb and Xerox and all of those. And this is where my gift really exploded because the CEO would ask me to sit in and take notes in very high level strategic meetings. And, so here you have all of these men around the table that are ideating. And I'm like, the natural next step or the natural solution to this is X. And I couldn't believe how people were spinning their wheels and not getting there. And further, I couldn't believe the price tag that came along with the consultants that were in the room that were supposed to give the answers. And so now here I am challenging everything that I thought I knew, because in the way that the world has shown you kind of hierarchy and, where you belong and when you're ready and when you're not ready, technically I should have never been ready to spit out solutions for things that these high paid consultants were getting paid for. Luckily and fortunately enough for me, I had a boss that their family was actually from Ukraine. That's interesting. Gosh,
Oh,
I should
wow.
probably reach out and check on them.
Interesting. Right.
He developed that and he appreciated that. And I'd speak up, but I could tell that I was kind of rubbing the consultants, making them feel some type of way. How can this child that is like, hasn't been out of college, that other job, I think I left it in like I was there for 9 months when this incident occurred, if that, know anything and be providing such insight? And then I had to ask, how did I even know these things? It was just innate. It's kind of like children that just play the piano without a lesson,
Just
or,
came out. Yeah.
it just came out. Like, it was just natural, methodical. This is
It
the
just
next
seemed
step
obvious to you.
to
It
me.
was problem solved. You listened to what everyone had to say, and you're like, "How are you all not coming to
Yeah,
this?"
how do you not come to that? Or this is what I think. And the boldness and the lack of fear in speaking up in those meetings, I go back and I do applaud that version of myself, because I could have had the mentality where I was second guessing whether they would laugh, whether I would be asked to not come back, or whether I was just wrong. And I was so every time it reminds me of of some of the other things I've did, and someone says, "And now what in the world made you think you could do it?" And I'm just kind of like, I don't really know,
Pure
girl,
ignorance, but honestly, like that's the beauty though, right? Like that's not
That's a
it's not
gift.
it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just that sometimes naivete is the thing that you needed to find and to speak up in the path, right?
Yeah, you
didn't
can
know
just do that without burning calories. You
Yeah.
you
can
didn't have
just
to
be
unlearn
like,
fear. Yeah.
oh, well, and other
well,
people are trying to, slow path.
and I think I just had an epiphany sitting here, right? So here I am, this very independent thinker. If I had not believed in myself, based on the surprise of so many, if they were my mentors, I probably wouldn't have done it.
Mm.
I just had that epiphany. Like it just put my stomach in knots. But I have had a lot of very, very accomplished people that have just been like, wow, like, why, what? And I'm sitting here thinking, like, man, if you were the one guiding me, because you couldn't believe when I did do it, which means you probably wouldn't have believed that I could,
Yes.
you know?
It's a
Right.
good thing you
Yeah.
didn't have any mentors.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to some degree, yeah.
Well, and I think
Yeah.
that there's people though that allow for us to have the space, like you're saying, you spoke up and you weren't reprimanded, or you had a boss that was open to that interaction, and I've seen that even in my story early on. I had someone who didn't think that there was anything above or below me, right?
Mm,
And so he just assumed that I could, and I assumed I could, so I didn't know that I couldn't until I went and tried to
mm,
get a different job, and then it was like little girled. And I was like,
mm.
what? I've been doing this. Like, have you done that? No.
Yeah.
Like, age and experience are correlated, but not direct to each other. People can spend 10 years in a corporate environment doing the same thing and not have very much experience. I don't care that they've been out of college for 10 years.
Yeah.
Where when you get to do lots of different things and experience many different environments, you can be only 10 years out of college, but actually have gained more experience. And so they're correlated, but not completely directly. And being unaware that you shouldn't say something, or even just remember having these moments where it was in my gut that I was like, I can't keep silent. I don't know how to keep silent. It's coming out. I'm saying it anyways, here it is. Those moments, honed that experience for you. So you got to move on further and faster than someone who would have stayed silent.
Yes.
Yeah.
For sure.
So, all
Fascinating.
right. So you end up,
This design firm.
speaking up, and then what led you from those moments, early career, into both big corporate and entrepreneurship? I mean, you've
And to
done
Kentucky.
it all.
Like, how'd you
Yeah.
end up in
Good point.
Kentucky?
How'd you get here?
So I ended up leaving the design firm and going to Miami. A lot of family in Miami, and we're also our roots are Bahamian, so a lot of people from the Bahamas settle in Miami, and some still live in Bahamas or whatever. But I went there because I had a lot of family there and wanted to try something different outside of New York. And here I am. So I was applying for jobs, and I turned down all the salary jobs and ended up saying yes to this straight commission job.
Smart.
And I was so impressed. The way that they interviewed you, they literally sent you out in the field with a group of people. And my group happened to be these very, very strong, sassy, cute, sophisticated Latina women. And we would knock on doors in the middle of the day and tell them we either need to see your CFO or your CEO because we are here to discuss your phone bill. Time I think about it, I am just like, wow. Again, where did this level of confidence that I could just interrupt now that as an entrepreneur and I understand how busy we are? But there is one thing that I learned that we will drop everything if somebody will save us money on our phone bill. I learned we will do that. And so I did that for a while. And then my boss asked, will you relocate? We want to open up and do this in Louisville, Kentucky. It was a company called Sidcor. They were an extension of Bell South's marketing. I think there was some sort of vendor partnership relationship. And I landed in Louisville. And I will tell you, I did not come willingly. I came willingly, but I was very reluctant at first. Like I wasn't dragging my
Excited.
feet and all that when they didn't pull me here. But I, when I did arrive, it was very different, right? Because it's not Miami. You don't have like all of these from a geography layout, businesses all in one area where you could work a territory. I mean, you are driving from place to place, and it's just not as it wasn't as fun. The way in which this market is set up is really not for that sort of work. I also had relocated with my boss, and so we shared an apartment, and I had 2 kids and she had 2 cats, and that didn't work,
Woo.
at all.
2 people. One was your
With
boss, 2 and your 2 children, and
and her 2 cats.
Yeah, those
well,
2 kids just showed up real quick in this story.
yeah,
Oh,
I know.
yes, yes. Well,
So were they born in Miami while you were in Miami?
the kids were born in New York.
Okay,
Sorry, yeah,
okay.
sorry. Skip past the children.
Like,
Love
who brought
them.
these kids in the room?
Love them, but yes. And so yes, I've got 2 kids. She's got 2 cats, and how we want to run our home is just different. And so I also, one of the reasons why the kids are just now showing up in the story, when I left from New York and went to Miami, the kids stayed behind. My job was to go find a place, get a job, get settled. And the kids came, let's see, I was in Miami for maybe 6 months. So I guess the kids came 7 months later. So we ended up moving to Kentucky. And when I was in Miami for 6 months, the kids were, back home with my family, and I could work as many hours as I wanted around the clock. And when they returned, my boss didn't understand that. She didn't understand that I had cutoff times, and now it was time for me to go home and be mom. And so eventually I ended up leaving that job, and there was an entrepreneur that met me knocking on doors, talking to the CEOs, that said, listen, I have purchased this payroll software and don't have the bandwidth to launch it because I'm running my accounting practice. And there was an accounting practice and like 6 other tax offices that she was responsible for, but she really believed in what this payroll company could be. And no experience, in running a payroll business, setting up a payroll business, but a lot of confidence in myself, said, I will do it. I will put it together. And I think about a year and a half, 2 years later, we were up to 6 staff, its own office space, 100 small businesses in Louisville as clients. She at that point wanted to bring in her best friend to run it. And hindsight 2020 now, as a business owner, I understand what her fears were. You have this person that has literally built this from ground zero and knows everything. And some people probably even think that it's hers. How can I regain control over my business? Because it was her money that funded it. I would have done things differently. I would have, probably given me equity or, something to keep me around. But when I saw that I was going to have to train someone to do the work that I had done, it just didn't excite me. And so I decided I'm going to strike out on my own. And I started with back office marketing. I knew through my time at, sales support at Avaya, my time with the design firm and the creativity and strategy and solutions, that there was a demand at the time for people that had the ability to get on the phone and schedule an appointment or qualify a lead for small businesses, sales teams to then go in and close. I saw that as a need and as an opportunity. I needed it at the payroll company because I was doing it all. I was telemarketing, I was out there networking, I was closing the deals. And so um, I thought, you know what? I can train people on how to call and get to the decision maker and provide them with the right set of questions, regardless of the industry, to determine whether or not there was an opportunity there. And that's what I did. I was selling packages and blocks of time for us to call before we even had office space. And that was very eye opening for me. What that had taught me was the respect that I had gathered in the business community, right? Because nobody writes you a check without proof of concept. And so here I was saying, I am going to launch this telemarketing firm and I am going to provide you with qualified leads for your business that your sales team can then go and close. And people believed me and they supported me and they wrote the checks. And so that's how we got going.
That's amazing. You're right. I think a lot of times that that trust or that early stage part of business is built on relationships that you already have. And what newer entrepreneurs or even new like acquisition entrepreneurs don't maybe realize that they haven't built their network yet, and that that is important. That is those people, that community rallies behind you when you need them. And gives you opportunities and chances, and they trust you because they've worked with you before and you've never let them down, those
Yeah.
kinds of moments.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when I left the automotive business and went into the sign business, I mean, people looked at me like, "You're gonna do what? You're gonna go in what business?" And so for a year, I bought an ad at Business First. For 1 year, I had my photo with my maiden name, Maggie Payette Harlow, because that's how people knew me, was through my dad's business. And it worked, because people were like, "Oh, that's what you're doing." But I
Mm,
would, if I had just put my name, or I don't think, if I'd put Maggie Harlow, it wouldn't have meant anything.
mm,
Mm.
But my photo and making sure I had Payette in there, it did translate. I mean, I
mm,
had a lot of customers call me
mhm,
from the automotive business
mhm,
to buy signs.
mhm,
Yeah.
What I love about what you're talking about is just so um, joyous for me, is the power of, first of all, door to door.
mm,
That I still think it's powerful. I mean, I still think that face to face thing has
mhm,
some energy behind it, but
mhm.
also don't be afraid to switch industries. Don't be afraid to try something new, because
Absolutely.
your expertise and your network
They
come
follow
with you.
you. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
for sure.
And building that like resilience and grit and
Yeah.
all of that
Mm,
is just so important. There's so many lessons learned. I do want to bring up one thing before we kind of continue on to the last part of the story about where you are now, what you've built, and point out that you were talking about how you basically got the experience of being an entrepreneur without having been the one invest in a business. You got to run, build, and learn and work on those skills without it being yours at first. And then also this experience of someone, and I'm not going to I don't know this person, I don't know this part of your story, but I've seen that sort of thing that you're describing play out in other people's small businesses through my years of coaching, where there's a control regrab and typically I feel like that is stemmed from our own fear as entrepreneurs. And I would love if you, just kind of touched on how that experience maybe shaped the way that you ended up doing business in the future with other people coming into your entrepreneurial sphere, and how you said, I would have done it differently. I know you've probably gotten the chance to do it differently as you've brought people into your world, because I've watched, you know, whether that be like a small business physical therapy practice where someone was like trying to regrasp control. And I'm like, that person is almost 60 years old. They should be actually glad that someone wants to take these reins and start training them up as their successor. But there's almost this own pride piece, again, not on the inside of these situations, but from an external person looking in saying, what is it making you clamp back down on that control? So tell us about that experience and how it shaped you being able to kind of hand off control when you became an entrepreneur.
mhm. Another blessing and a curse. There's some areas in which, some might say, well, it's a good thing that certain people take back control because maybe that person was going to move away, or maybe they were going to have kids and decide that they didn't want to continue, in the role. There's a lot of reasons why a person who is not as vested financially may not stay the course. And so the business owner needs to ensure that they have protected themselves as well as the
Absolutely.
assets that's been built. When I say I would have done things differently, I had reduced my own salary at this company to create a marketing budget. When you see those
Mm.
sort of behaviors, that's a level of dedication that as a CEO, I've watched people scream when we've had to reduce salaries simply just because of the market, right? So for someone to make a choice,
You were acting as an owner without the
I was
ownership.
acting
Right.
as an owner
Right.
without it. And had I known better, I would not have done that, right? Because I essentially reduced the amount of income coming into my home to take care of me and my children. And I had no equity in that business. But that's how much I believed in it. And so, but if I were to have had someone like that in my business, that character trait would have automatically triggered for me. If you're going to make that sort of sacrifice, I should make the sacrifice and I should make you an owner.
Mhm.
That's me. That's who I am. It's the way that I'm wired. That is also,
Or
costs me at times as well, because when I see people going above and beyond, I do want to give them a piece of the action. I do want them to be a part of it. And sometimes um, who you marry, right, um, can really set you up for success or failure. And not all marriages, as we know, end
well.
well, right? So I am still very much I would really love for people that I really feel that deserve it to share in benefiting in ownership of the company. But I don't know that my way is the right way. It's just the
Well,
way
there's
that
many avenues to incentivize someone who shows the dedication that you did. There's many
sure.
ways, and that might not be owned. There might be actual equity. There's things called vanishing equity. There's just like straight profit sharing that has no equity attached. There's all kinds of different ways, but recognizing that you have this person who's stepped up and what a unique attribute that is. And when you have one of those people as an entrepreneur, know that you have found a rarity. And instead of maybe feeling threatened, if that person is aligned with you, then finding ways to fold it in and to help them grow rather than feeling threatened by it. And that's what you've been able to do. And that doesn't mean that it's always worked out well. And so it is a risk, right? But
Mhm.
when we think about buying, building, and selling businesses as assets, which is kind of like the theme of Renegade, being able to self assess and say, am I pushing back because I am afraid of losing control? Is it fear pushing this, or is there some other reason pushing why I might not be parting with that control? Does
Mhm.
that,
Mhm. Mhm.
All right, bring us to, uh, you had so many other ventures in there, but, T Bain and Co., and then what you do now.
Gosh, man, there were some great times and then there were some really bad times. I mean, one, and that's the thing that is this misconception with business is that, you know, anytime that there's failure, oh, you're a bad CEO, right? I mean, it just comes along with the game. And especially for women, the moment we fail or we have a tough time, um, the condemnation is just insane.
Yeah.
Between my husband and all of his buddies that have failed this and failed that and then pop up again, I'm just kind of like, man, I certainly wish that we got the grace from you guys and some of our peers that we are forced to give ourselves. And I think that is the biggest piece. As it relates to the threat, I do want to speak and touch on that because one of the other things that I'd like to really see more of with women, I was just speaking to a young woman out of DC yesterday who I'd really like to come and do some consulting. And I could tell that, she wants to make absolutely sure that I'm going to be comfortable that in the event that she's extremely successful and in the limelight, that I am going to be comfortable. And that was very telling for me. And I had to remind her my glory is in the ability to pass the torch.
But I don't think that that is necessarily holistically true. And I think it's something that we can work on as entrepreneurs. And I don't think that's necessarily a female entrepreneur or a male entrepreneur attribute. I think people as a whole sometimes struggle in sharing
A majority of people struggle to share
that
that.
limelight.
Very difficult to pass the baton.
Yeah.
The reality, though, is I'm not asking for people who don't want to change.
Right.
What I'm asking for are the people who are not used to seeing the torch being passed to trust it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think so often that there is this, well, what's the motive? Well, why would you want to do that? And I coined this term black-sided. You can be so black-sided about an opportunity that is really meant to just help you that you will sabotage it and end up with absolutely nothing.
Mm.
And so the challenge isn't necessarily to change those that really struggle with passing the torch. If that's not your thing, listen, I'm not here to beat you up over it. That's not your thing. And I wouldn't want you to, if it's not your thing, I don't want you passing the torch anyway, because you're just going to get in people's way. So if you know you're not a good torch passer, do not pass the torch. Right?
Yeah.
But for those people that have received the invitation to receive the torch, take the torch, right? Stop waiting for the shoe to drop.
Well, and I think the story you just told about this young woman, I think is important, is have the conversation.
Mhm.
Don't assume something is implied. State it explicitly
Absolutely.
and say, I'm interested in the torch being passed to me. Is that something you're interested in and comfortable with?
Yeah.
Or, is there a way for us to
Yeah.
do that? So I love that about that young woman, that she had the
Absolutely.
presence of mind to say it, which I think is often hard for young people. Well, I shouldn't even say that. I think it's hard for all people
Yeah, for people
to
in
say
general.
things out loud and
Yeah.
be explicit about it and be clear. But it
Yeah.
does prevents a lot of heartache.
Yeah,
It does,
absolutely.
yeah.
It does. It really does. So, okay, so back to the T-Bain side. And so after having some ups and some downs, some recessions, some massive layoffs, some loss of funding, I mean, you name it, I've seen it. I then decided to focus solely on more transactional type businesses, more consumer focus as opposed to B2B. A lot of my work had been B2B up until then. And a lot of that was because after losing the various funding, I needed, they say cash is king. I needed things where cash was coming in every day. So I opened up a boutique, AFM Threads. We had a location in St. Matthews. We had one also in Oxmoor Mall. I then purchased Black Jockey's Lounge. And the way in which I was able to do those things, I think that's also really important to share is like, well, how, if you were having a difficult time in the business, how were you put in a position to afford to be able to open the others? We probably had about 500 to 600,000 in payables that had not yet been realized. Like they were still kind of out there, and we had just gone through a lot of layoffs. I think I held on to maybe one from a team of maybe 20. I was down to a full time and a part time person. But those payables for the work that had already been done were still outstanding. I do believe that if we had gotten those money and our clients had paid sooner, then we would not have had to lay off a massive people. Name of the game. It's
Cash
business,
flow,
right?
yeah, yeah.
It's business. So at any rate, as those dollars begin to come in, I never re-ramped up the prior business, the consulting firm, the business process outsourcing. I decided to invest in other businesses. And so it's not like we started those businesses off with a significant amount of cash. So we were in a position where we had to very quickly turn things around, get them up and going, get them generating revenue. And what slowly began to happen as I sat down and I looked at the various, what I would consider projects, although they were businesses under T. Bain and Co. We had a core team at the T. Bain and Co. corporate office that was responsible for providing back office or shared services across the different brands. Is that, I am developing businesses in spaces where there were not a lot of Black women. And I recognize a responsibility there, right? And this is where, goes back to the conversation of, yes, meritocracy is absolutely important. We want people to work hard for what they get, but sometimes there are spaces where some of us have not yet arrived. Like
Mhm.
people don't see us. They don't, we're not so visible. And so I started to realize that I'm going to find a lot of amazing entrepreneurs that have been waiting, and could totally do it. But sometimes you just need to see somebody else to do it to say, oh, I can do this too. I have sons. And so, when it comes down to the whole men thing, guys know this. They know that there were so many things when they were younger that they really weren't sure they could do until they saw another one of their guy friends do it or a family member do it. And that gave them that push and that confidence. Well, women, we're no different, right?
Mhm.
And then when you start putting it into silos and you're in the Black community, it's no different, right? It's just like, oh, now that I can see myself in someone else, I'm inspired to want to do that. So I recognized that I was kind of in these spaces doing it at a level of expertise that hadn't been demonstrated. And that was really, I realized that was important. And then I also noticed that I had this kind of back to when I was younger, I had this ability to kind of transcend whoever, social economics, race, gender. I just had that ability.
Connect to people.
Yeah,
Mhm.
to do it. And so I started to really hone in on that, and really celebrate that what really made T Bain and Co. stand apart is that we were connecting through community. While we were a for-profit business, we shared values that nonprofits have in lifting up the community and connecting and trying to give back and, all those things. As I think about T Bain and Co., if I could go back and do a lot of things over again, it would be an understanding that some people do not understand social impact enterprising. And the more that I reflected on that when I stepped down and converted to more of an advisor capacity to that team, I would have focused more on some of the businesses that were heavy into selling a product. I really would have. That those would have been because I think people understand that. They just do. They understand that better than, you really I want you to support today's woman because our mission is driving connectivity across race. Yeah, okay, but how does that, how does that, like
How
from a
do
business
I
Yes.
how do I hold
perspective?
on to that?
Yeah, like how, like,
Where
and
is
how does that help my company, right? So there are things that I recognize now that from a, again, social enterprising perspective that was very difficult for some businesses to grasp. And again, if I could go back, that would be one of the things that I would change. And so at any rate, after, oh gosh, I think it was 2022, my husband had been asking me and watching all that I had done and all that I would accomplish. What I didn't realize is how in awe he was of my ability to thread things as well as I did and spin as many plates as I did without dropping any babies. I think he was just really in awe. And what I also did not understand is that he himself, while he had built this amazing empire through acquisition, asset purchase, all these things, he was at a standstill. So when he was asking me to step away, there was almost kind of like this, what do you mean step away and come run this, right? Like it wasn't gelling for me.
yeah, so this is his
Yeah,
company.
these are your assets and your things, and I got my thing going on. Like,
Mhm.
why would I stop doing this over here and come over here? Now, from a family and a legacy perspective, and I also didn't understand, and this is, I don't know, as far as like husband, wife, I also didn't understand the magnitude. I hadn't lifted up every hood.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And
because he
so
had built something
he had built something
crazy.
crazy. Crazy. And I mean, I guess I get it. There's a lot that he didn't know about my business either. Like he couldn't possibly understand every single intricate detail. But I was not, when I first started T Bain and Co. back in 20, well, it took on different names, but the original name was NAC. But when I first launched, there are just I had so much exposure in the environmental space, um, and when I kind of decided to get into more of the B2C work, and then we transformed into T Bain and Co., I thought I had left that behind me, right? That was the other thing. I had a seat in that world. I understood there was very little diversity in that world.
Mhm.
Um, I also knew it was a lot of work. And Team Angle, I was having fun. I was, kumbaya, and we're doing social impact. And yeah, and then when you started realizing, okay, this is not making the type of money that it should, right? I started to hear him more. And I started to begin to lift up and see what it is that he had
So
created
so try to explain it in a succinct
in a
way
succinct
for our
way.
listeners and watchers because it is such an interesting business.
It is. It is. And so we at American Clean Resources Group, one, we are a small publicly traded company, headquartered in Colorado, and our main project is in Nevada. And our mission is to build out one of the largest industrial manufacturing parks in the United States powered off of renewable energy. So there's about a total between our land that we own fully outright, 1,200 acres, and there's an additional 16,000 acres that surrounds it. To understand the magnitude, it's a $3 billion build out to get this done. And we have just contracted with an engineering firm to do our site plan. And so the bottom line for this park is we will be heavy on data centers as tenants in the industrial park, as well as Bitcoin mining operations, waste to energy. Waste to energy, think of anything that you turn into waste that could be converted into, or that becomes waste that you can convert into energy, and then also industrial storage. And so, what makes it exciting for me is taking my left brain, right brain, my
Mhm.
creativity, we've given it a name, Greenway to Power, um, and beginning to lay out what this site will look like, but then tapping into the other side of my, operational logistics, process oriented, is also mapping out how all of these inner workings, how they all will play off of one another.
It's amazing.
What, a lot of people that are familiar with a lot of the solar energy projects around the country, what a lot of people do not know that really makes ACRG stand apart, we're one of 16 solar energy zones that were written into legislation. Specifically, our solar energy zone was written into legislation by former Senator Harry Reid. And one of the things that he found so compelling is that not only do you have this amazing remote location that does not have a lot of issues with weather that you have in other places in the world, but you have a power substation already built and operating directly on property that you own, the only available water rights within a 15-mile radius, a fiber optic line running through the property. And then there's this massive amount of mining waste, which we call tailings, that sit on that property that we get to reprocess rather than mining new, and supply the American supply chain so that we can become independent with our own,
So
minerals
you're
again.
green, you're recycling, you're generating energy, clean energy, cleaning up the environment,
Yeah.
creating workspaces, crypto, data storage. I mean, it's like
It's
every
so
side of the aisle loves you.
I am definitely, I tell people every day, there were a lot of things with the Infrastructure Act out of the Biden administration that benefited us. And there are a lot of things that are coming out of the Trump administration that are benefiting us.
Yeah.
And so I am, try to steer clear away from the political, aspect of it all. But we are very, very excited about what the future looks like for Greenway to Power.
is so, so interesting. But I do want to capture one thing before we wrap up, because I think it's something that I have heard from other Black entrepreneurs, and I would like to hear your perspective, which is you said I was doing T Bain and Co. in this social responsibility thing, and then you defined what you're doing now as not social responsibility or social impact. And I would argue that it is in a lot of ways. It's a different type, right? Um, and I think that you've talked about how you had um, your businesses and they were for profit with social impact and how people couldn't compute that. And I have heard from other, especially Black women entrepreneurs who have this like inner battle with making money, being in nonprofit world, doing good for the world, carrying this responsibility and weight to be all of those things.
Hmm.
Can you talk just a little bit about that and the fact that you've been able to transcend types of businesses
Hmm.
and that through line?
Maybe I also should preface or restate it this way. We were for sure a business transacting goods and services, or, we were a business. Our messaging, however, focused more on the good that we were bringing to the earth
Mhm.
than on the business proposition, right? And so I could lead with Greenway to Power, and I could talk about the fact that we're cleaning up America and we are going to be producing clean energy. But the reality is that we address a national security concern, and we are going to reprocess tailings at this site that will provide gold and silver back into the supply chain for manufacturing, as well as tungsten and manganese. We are going to take waste and we're going to convert it into energy. We are going to store your industrial storage for your industrial storage needs, right? So I'm with T Bain and Co. I focus so much on the good that we were bringing and not enough on the business value proposition.
Mhm.
And so while yes, Greenway to Power, one of the reasons why I finally said yes, that I will become the chairwoman of the board as well as the CEO of this business, is I recognize that I can still do good. I still intend to do good. I still intend to leverage the doors and the access that I have to provide opportunities for others.
Mm-hmm.
However, how can I learn from the mistake that I made and focus my efforts not on just the good that I intend to do in the world with Greenway to Power, but how I'm going to make you money? And that is something that I think that we as women entrepreneurs, because we do have certain attributes that make us very empathetic, that we want to focus on. Watch how many times you might have someone that say, well, we give back and a percentage of our sales go to this. I mean, that's really nice, right? No one I'm not condemning us for thinking about those things, but what's your value proposition? What good are you bringing to the marketplace? How are you helping the economy? How can you help my business grow? How can I partner with you so that I can make money?
Mm-hmm.
Those are just the things that if I could go back when we were spending time building out T Bain & Co. and looking for what we were doing and bringing, we didn't focus enough on the value
Yeah,
proposition.
be a little shameless about it.
Absolutely.
Like,
Yeah.
what's the point if
Absolutely.
I'm not figuring out how to do it? And I have to say this: the story is the stacking of what you've learned and the next step. And I cannot wait to see
Mhm.
what you do past this, because this is huge, but I know there's more chapters for you. And I just so excited to see you just continue to go bigger and bigger and bigger.
Well, thank you.
And
I
I
really
th-
appreciate that.
To add to that, I think that evolution that you're telling is something that I want our audience to hear, because I think that sometimes we feel the pressure, whether that be just women entrepreneurs in general, but I've also heard it out of my Black entrepreneur friends of feeling that pressure to lead with social impact. And you're like, no, I'm still making the change, but I'm also making the business proposition. And you went through that journey and now you're owning it, and you get to do both,
Mhm.
and you get to profit and help the world.
Mhm.
And that is it.
Mhm.
Like that is what we're after here. That's how it is how our world works, and it's how we get to change it for the better in the future.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for talking to us. I love your story. I cannot wait to have you back on in a few years when this is here and alive, and you've just totally killed this Greenway. I can't wait for it. But thank you for telling us the story where you're at now and sharing how you've evolved as an entrepreneur.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.